Hello and welcome to BikeSocial. I'm Michael Mann, and this is episode 12 of our Better Riding series, brought to you by Bennetts and Honda Motorcycles UK. It's actually the final episode of series 2, but don't worry because we'll be back with series 3 and indeed series 4 later on. We all want to be better, right? At whatever we do. It's human nature, I think. And of course, that goes to riding as well. So better equals brilliant, of course, but it also equals safer, importantly. And this series is all about learning new skills or fine-tuning old ones. And we have a collection of videos and articles packed full of advice. And of course, it doesn't matter if you've just started out on your motorcycling journey, whether you're coming back after some time away, or in fact, if you ride every single day and have done for the last 30 or so years, there's always something to learn. And there's always something we can all be better at. And to do so, we've teamed up with professional motorbike coach Mark McVeigh, an experienced rider coach, ex-MotoGP engineer, riding academy owner for over 20 years, and the inventor of the Moto DNA rider training tech. Mark has taught more than 10,000 riders to be safer, smarter, and more confident. And that is the key, isn't it? Confidence. And here he is, all the way from Australia by the power of the internet.
Hi, Michael. How are you going?
Fine, thank you very much. How are you?
Yes, not too bad, not too bad. We're getting through these series, so yeah, it's good times.
I know, it's a bombardment of awesomeness, isn't it? We've got so many tips and tricks and things to remember, but I'm glad we're kind of keeping it short per episode. So even I can go away and on my ride home, I can think, yes, we learned about that today. Anyway, Mr. McVeigh, what are we going to talk about today?
Yep, so today we're talking about corner hazard avoidance. So, essentially avoiding the biggest crash stat of all. So, we've spoke before, Michael, about the loss of control, in corner statistics. And we'll have a link to, research on that in the description. But the most serious injuries come from, these loss of control in corners, particularly in the rural environments involving another vehicle. So, at motorbikecoach.com, we use these kind of aviation principles in our training. So it is super important to speak about and to train for these common crash scenarios and, use these drills that we have designed to mitigate the risk.
Yeah, well, I remember when you were over in the UK a couple of years ago, and we did the corner hazard avoidance drill. And it's all very well kind of knowing what's to come, a bit like the emergency brake. We talked about that before. You kind of expect it's coming, don't you? So when your man on his clipboard puts his hand up, you think, right, okay, well, this is... But actually, and my point is that knowing that it's coming and doing it properly, different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. And, we've got this fine rider here doing the corner avoidance, braking and swerving in a corner. And it's interesting, we often get pushback from sort of road safety stakeholders. We're talking to people all over the world. We've got this kind of technology that we're bringing in, and even traditional schools, we kind of get that pushback or questioning. But it's really simple why we do this drill. You just got to look at the stats, and despite the obvious need, there's virtually no training that covers this crash scenario. And if you've got an oncoming car across the white line, or a dog runs out and you have not practiced, the correct and intuitive reaction, and you do it for the first time in the real world, the outcome's obviously going to be poor. And, we really see this at our school. Most students, they can't perform this drill first time, especially, swerving left in a left-hand corner. And we'll explore that a little bit later.
I'll be interested to find out what your thoughts are about that. But this technology, these tips, this training, these drills that you teach, have you ever had to use them on the real road?
Yes, for sure. Riding on the road for 40 years, mainly on rural mountain roads too. That's where I kind of live and I enjoy, away from traffic too. And plus a lot of off-road adventure riding these days. But I did have a close call recently. And, you can see this car here in the distance, and, look at the time here, the 2 seconds, and, the car's essentially just come past me. And the other thing is, there was dirt. That was a dirt road, so the grip's significantly reduced. but we'll come back and analyze that video in more detail later.
Okay, but so away from dirt roads, how could we practice? How could I practice?
Yeah, well, I guess, we've got this drill, this corner avoidance drill that you did. And, if we kind of have a look here, and we've got the couple of circles just to kind of explain what's going on. So we've got this black dotted line. So in the left-hand corner, the rider rides on this black dotted line, and the black cars, or the black sort of simulates a car. The car could be across that white line. So the rider's got to swerve left and basically stop. So that's on the left-hand corner. And then, of course, on a right-hand corner, same deal. We want to swerve left and stop, as if the car's kind of there. So it's really important to practice that drill. Yeah, that we've kind of set this up. We've been doing it for years now. And like I say, maybe 98% of riders cannot do the drill proficiently, especially the left hand the first time.
Why the left hand?
Well, you're jumping ahead, but I don't want to spoil the surprise, but it's something to do with cornering forces. So if you're watching the video, tell us in the comments what you think, why you think the difference. And then by the time we get to the end of the video, you should understand.
All right, cool. All right, we'll get that lined up for a little bit later on in the episode. Now, Mark, we've spoken before about this sort of 3-pillar approach that you use with motorbikecoach.com, and that's skill, craft, and mind, isn't it? Does that apply here to this sort of these drills and this training?
Yeah, 100%. So what we'll do is we'll pick the parts of the system, the 3-pillar system, that are kind of relevant to this problem of corner avoidance. So if we start on the first one, skill, and that's really your ability to control your motorcycle. So a big part of corner avoidance is to be able to swerve and brake while the bike's kind of already leaned over. So that is the challenge. So it's really important to kind of practice that until your reaction is intuitive. And we've got this, here's the drill in action. You can see, swerving left and stopping, and this is in slow motion. I'll just run that back again. This is so difficult to do. You can see the rider's on the center line, and then they brake. So he's got the front brake on, and he's swerving in and stopping in the sixpence. So, that is just so difficult to do. I cannot explain. Well, because you've tried it, right? But I've got some footage here, from our students, So the first one is, doing a left hand drill. So you can see the rider coming around and swerves. I've got a little light box here, and I'm standing here with a remote control. So I'll play that again, and you can see the rider's coming around. And then whenever I press that light, he sees the light or she sees the light, and they swerve left. But you can see that rider has barely swerved, and they're not really going that quick either. We try to build them up to real world speeds, but they've barely kind of moved off the center line. And then if we get it going the other way, so we're going around the right hand bend, so swerve left and stop, same deal. So you can see they moved a little bit more, when they were going around the right hand corner. So, and that is just super typical. And that rider was actually going quite slow. We want the riders to go at real world speeds. And when you're going a little bit, quicker at the real world speed, that's what happens.
I remember it. I think exactly the same. And I thought, when you're in that situation and you're riding in the circle and you lent a little bit and you can see the dude with the clipboard and it's coming. And yet I still went like that was probably an overhead shot of me, just because you go about 2.5 feet to the left, if that. And you think, oh, wow, I've done a great job. But actually, no, because you've not avoided anything other than, a snail.
Exactly.
Mark, should we move on to the next pillar is craft. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. So craft. So what do we need to think about, for these avoidance maneuvers? And the first thing's the vision, and that eye tracking that we use. Looking at that vanishing point or the limit point to spot the hazard as soon as possible. And we'll, when we review that video of that close call, you'll see, how good the vision was, and we'll also talk about the target fixation and peripheral vision as well. And we kind of lean on this a lot. It's very easy to talk about target fixation, but unless you've practiced it and it's intuitive, you're really at risk. So, that's a big thing of what we teach. And then the other thing is riding defensively. So, your appropriate speed. So you can stop in the distance, you can see, that's one thing. And then here we've got the safety bubble, so you're using your position, the safety bubble to adjust your speed and your position, away from the hazard. So they're the key things to pay attention to from the craft element.
We've spoken before, haven't we, about reaction times. Is it the right time now to talk about reaction and perception times?
Yes, absolutely. So, the 2 seconds is kind of the thing here. So the perception, if you remember, that was kind of the time to realize there's a problem, and that's about a second. And then the reaction time is the same deal. It's about a second too. And this is what kind of road safety stakeholders use. And we played this video before. And if you remember, we used the sign. So if you can see the sign just coming up here, it's just there. So that sign is 2 seconds away, 1,000, 2,000. So, that's kind of, and that's before the rider's actually done anything to slow down or change direction. So super important to consider that and just be aware, when we talk about the close call, we'll use that a lot.
That's 2 seconds for an average person, isn't it, as well? I probably skipped ahead and we didn't do that third pillar of mind. Perhaps we should dive into mind right now. Yeah.
The mind is kind of, the attitude, if my attitude is, if you ride a bike, you'd better be ready. You better expect it. And you'll see that in the close call. Like, it's not choreographed. This was the real world. If it's the car's fault, which it would have been in that case, we'll always come off worse, especially if it's a head on. So we really need to accept that. And the other thing is the growth mindset, remembering, 20 hours roughly of training to get our license versus 10,000 hours to master most skills, even though something as complex as riding a motorbike. So, you're always learning. I review every ride. What would I do differently next time? That's kind of my favorite thing to do on the ride.
So piecing all those three pillars together and the examples you've given there, how can we then apply that to your close call?
Okay, cool. So if we play the reel now, and you remember there's the car, okay, in the distance, and that's kind of, most riders unfortunately wouldn't spot that car there, but I definitely saw it straight away because I'm looking at the vanishing point or the limit point, and I've spotted the car. And then we've got the timer going. So let's see, how we go with the timer. So there's the car, and then 1,000, 2,000 seconds. So 2 seconds. And I've kind of braked and swerved, and the car, is nearly past me. And luckily, the car kind of swerved at the last minute too. But of course, you don't know that the car's going to swerve. Sometimes they don't, and then it's all over Red Rover. So, so there's that element. So thinking about that, perception time, reaction time. If we're saying that the average is 2 seconds, that was 2 seconds. And most riders wouldn't have actually started slowing down or swerved within that time. So that's quite a sobering thought. So just something to be aware of, okay? And then the next thing is, from the skills perspective, is covering the brake. So if you look here, you can see there's the car, and I'm actually covering the brake. And I've already, if we play this back a little bit, there's the car swerved and braked and, pretty much got most of the speed off. So covering the brake was a big thing. And we spoke about that in the last video, about how that really saves a bucket load of time. So that's a big one. And then if we bring in the vision part of it, okay, so we'll play this reel. So there's the car, right? So I'm not actually looking directly at that car now. I'm looking where I'm going to go, which is my escape plan. But peripherally, I can still watch the car. And you can see, and I might have to edit out that profanity as well. But yeah, there was, I think it was a profanity there. But so you can see I've spotted the car, but I've immediately, because I'm ready, I'm expecting this, right? I'm ready, and I'm already looking for my escape route. But peripherally, I'm keeping an eye on the car, because the car might not have swerved, and I might have needed to swerve even more to get out of the way of the car. Okay, so quickly spotted, okay, I can go to off the side of the road. That's fine. So that's the vision element. And then the next thing we'll talk about is the position. So you can see there's the car, and then the video here is actually the angle makes it look worse than what it is. But if you look at the distance between the bike and the side of the road, it's not actually as bad as that, but it's still not optimal. And really to see and be seen, you should be over to as far to the left so you can kind of see through that corner. So I've kind of compromised it a little bit, and we will explain that why. So there's a couple of reasons. The first reason is that it's actually really like slippery at the side of the road because of the gravel. All the gravel on a dirt road washes to the side, so it's a wee bit slipperier. Yep, but there is another reason that we'll delve into as well.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because we're trying to make progress on a what we think is an empty road, don't you? But sometimes these things crop up, and you have to be ready for them. That's why they're hazards. If we knew they were coming, there wouldn't be hazards. So,
Exactly.
correct me if I'm wrong here, but that seems like skill and craft. Did we miss anything from mind? Have you got a takeaway there from the mind filler?
Yes, there is. So I'll just play this little clip here. So you can see there's a car, right? And it's what it's doing is it's just making a whole heap of dust. So I'm sitting in behind it and I'm just getting all this dust. And I'm actually annoyed.
This is earlier in the day or earlier in the ride?
This is earlier, exactly. So I'm getting annoyed and going because normally they're just driving up the middle of the road, talking to each other, listening to the music, whatever. I'm just trying to find a spot to get past. So that is really significant, because part of the mind is, hey, how could I do this better next time? Why? And if you think back to my position, it was actually a bit compromised. And when I thought back, I was actually because I was annoyed. And you've only got so much head space, you know what I mean? And if some of your, computing power is thinking about, oh, that bloody car driver, they were creating the dust, that it loses your focus on the real game, which was to be avoiding that crash. So that was, just to reflect and go, okay, next time, then when I'm in that situation again, the next time I'm going to be aware, okay, don't get annoyed at that, stay sharp, stay clear, so that, you can kind of protect yourself.
That's a really interesting reel, and then it's nice to have had it dissected. On my way into the studio this morning, I came off the dual carriageways going up the slip road and around quite a sizable roundabout. And it's, when I say sizable, I think you can carry quite a bit of speed around the corner. So you sort of banked over, coming round, there's a bush on the inside, can't see too much of what's inside. But what I did see was a piece of litter. Now, 35, 40 minutes after the event, I know that it was probably a Coke can or something like that. But it could have been anything, couldn't it? I mean, it could have been an animal which could have darted either way. It could have been anything to hurt me. Anyway, point is that it's a hazard. And as I've come round, what I've done is I've gone to my intuition or the skills almost like that we've been talking about over these last few episodes. And I've kind of lightened my grip on the handlebar and counter steered away from it. And it was just poignant that it was on my way here to talk about cornering avoidance, and there I am, a real world example of my own. If I'd have caught it on camera, I'd have played it to you right now.
Nice.
All right, perhaps we can compact this. Do you want to come up with a bit of a summary for this episode, Mark?
Yeah, well, I guess always, put a bit of a disclaimer, and we can't cover everything in 20-minute video. So, hopefully these tips and advice help somebody become a better rider. But, there's obviously big gap between 20 hours and 10,000 hours. So, if you head to motorbikecoach.com, you can get your riding tips and advice every week. So that's one way to do it. Or head to school and get some training. But just the key thing is to have that growth mindset, to move up towards the mastery, always learning.
I like the way that you talk about reviewing your own ride. I think that's really quite an important thing. It's well worth. You come to the end of your ride, switch your bike off, take your lid off, and think to yourself, if you've got 5 minutes, just have a little think about what could I have done better? What did I do well? I mean, almost like, pat yourself on the back. What did go well? And then then your mind is changing, isn't it? You're always growing because you think to yourself, okay, well, I did that right, but perhaps I should have been further away from that car or been on the brakes a bit sooner or whatever. But really interesting stuff. Now, Mark, I mentioned at the beginning, this is the last episode in this series. Now, we are coming back, aren't we? We're probably going to have a month or two off, and then we'll be back a little later. And we're recording this mid-August, and we'll be back perhaps mid-June, and we'll be back early August. But any clues on what we might be talking about in the next series?
Yep. So next episode will be live early August, and that'll be biomechanics. So that's kind of optimizing your body for better riding.
Good, because that sounds like a school subject that I was not very good at.
No, we'll learn you.
Brilliant. Mark, enjoy a break. Thank you for your input, and we'll see you later on in the summer.
No worries. Thanks, Michael.
Brilliant. Thanks also to Honda Motorcycles UK for supporting this series, the entire Better Riding series so far, and in fact, yes, for Series 3 and Series 4 forthcoming. Mark and I will be back to talk about biomechanics, which sounds fascinating. So in the meantime, don't forget to check out all of the other episodes in our Better Riding series. They're available as videos here on YouTube, or you can go to bikesocial.co.uk and learn a little bit more about them there, because they're sort of in article form as well. But before you go, just got 3 more places of interest for you, which might be very interesting. So firstly, we've got Bennetts Bike Club. Okay, so that's our new community website. It's full of answers from experts to any motorcycle related question. A similar offering can be found on our private Facebook group, and that is called Bennetts BikeSocial. Come and join us there. And finally, if you're not already a BikeSocial member, why not? It is free for those who insure their bikes directly with Bennetts. Otherwise, you can pay £6 a month or £60 a year, and that gives you access to well over 200 different motorcycle apparel, clothing, training discounts, competitions, and all sorts of general merriment of motorcycling. Okay, just search BikeSocial membership. Thank you for being with us, and we will see you next time.
Honda Motorcycles are supporting this series because safety is one of their key business pillars, and their quest for safety inspires their innovations in products, technology and education, which is why they're committed to achieving 0 traffic fatalities involving Honda mobility products worldwide by 2050.
Learning